Mark Gibson's Human Knowledge Channel. Accountant with designations CPA, MBA, CMA, ACPA, ASA, Australia. Enjoy learning!
Kita na ulit?
Yes, sir.
O sige, thank you. Thank you. So as I was saying, these four measures to evaluate economic performance, we have already discussed this, no? So this is just a refresher, also to benefit your review for the midterms exams or return on income. It's just income over investment or investment turnover over multiplied by the return on sales. Residual income is simply your income or net operating income less required rate of return multiplied by the investment. The economic value added, this is actually after tax operating income less the weighted average cost of capital, and you're very familiar how you compute your cost of capital, no? So this should be easy for you. Multiply by the total asset less current liabilities. Like I said last week, the topics that the remaining topics won't really deal with a number of problems, no? These are more on theoretical part na, no? So we're done with most of the calculations, no? So return on sales, simply your operating income divided by sales. So those are the four measures of economic performance. So number two, choose the time horizon of the performance means. Should performance measures be calculated for 1 year or for multiple year time horizon? So multiple periods of evaluation are sometimes appropriate, no? So it really depends, no? Whether uh, you're doing tactical or strategic plan, no? So tactical, this is basically your plan. You're planning for short term. This is your short term business plan. No? Strategic could be 5 years or more. No? So yeah. Number three, choose the alternative definitions for performance measures. So in this case, you have your total assets available, total assets employed minus the current liabilities, and your shareholders' equity. Fourth, you have choose the measurement alternatives for performance measures. So sabi nila, there are two different ways to measure or value your asset. Current costs, the asset measure based on cost of purchasing asset today. Historical cost is the aggregate price paid by the firm to acquire ownership. Um, this is simply your net book value or your historical cost. No? So net book value maintains consistency with balance sheet for external reporting purposes. More meaningful comparisons of return on investment measure. So class our assets, we're actually evaluating that by net book value at the end of the month, no, or at the end of the reporting period. So if it's calendar year, December 31, 2021, no. So that's basically your IFRS or your GAAP. Net book value measure invested capital more consistent with a definition of income. In computing income, current period depreciation on long-term asset is deducted as expense. So, well, alam niyo naman to as accounting student, no? So, when we're actually doing the net book value, and since it complies with your GAAP or your IFRS, this is actually what's being reported with authority. This is what we're releasing to our creditors or to our investors, no? So this is diba, during our first session, we've differentiated financial accounting with management accounting, and we say in management accounting, there's no gap, no? There are no rules to follow, no? So uh, since management accounting reports are mainly for internal use only. So we're in financial accounting reports. These are reports provided to external, therefore it has to follow different accounting policies, no, accounting rules. So yeah. So the usual method of computing depreciation are arbitrary and they should not allow affecting ROI or residual income. When long-term assets are depreciated, net book value declines over time. So again, this is not new to you. This result in misleading increase in ROI and residual income. So in this statement, it's just showing how it distorts, no, calculating for really the net book value. So of course, when you compute for your net book value, you compute also for your depreciation, and it's just telling you that in so doing, it gives a misleading increase in ROI and residual income. Choose target level of performance. So careful selection of benchmarks or target can help offset shortcomings with historical costs based on ROI, residual income, or EVA measures. So many problems of asset valuation and income measurement can be satisfactorily solved if top management gets everybody to focus on what is attainable in forthcoming budget period. Popular way to establish targets is to set continuous improvement targets. Pag-usapan natin to. Um, Earlier mentioned to you that robotics, no, is becoming prevalent, no, in different organizations, especially within business process outsourcing or shared service. Ano ba muna difference ng shared service sa BPO? Ano ba ka-idea? Sige. Sige, kung wala, ito lang naman siya. So, BPO, business process outsourcing. So, basically, company can get as many clients as they can, especially for transactional activities, no? So, ito yung the likes of Accenture, ano ba, micro outsourcing. So, kahit sinong kliyente, pwede niyang kunin. While ang shared service is part of a multinational company or a, not a branch but under one company. So if it's Xerox shared service, it's catering only to Xerox entities. So yun lang naman ang difference niya. Pareha silang outsource in such a way that, well, so talking about the Philippines, outsource to the Philippines. Pero ang BPO company, it caters to as many as clients as they can, while a shared service is under a multinational company umbrella. No? So, yeah. So, well, ito nga, pinag-uusapan natin about continuous improvement targets. No? Usually, for BPO or shared service, continuous improvement targets are translated into quantitative measure. Paano yun? So, in Xerox case, sabi, you have to deliver 10% savings. 10% savings based on last year. Ganun palagi, no? So, kung ano yung performance mo last year, yun yung magiging basis talaga nung plan mo. Kasi, syempre, you don't plan based on different we plan based on different factors, especially economic condition, pero ang pinaka starting point talaga ng plan mo is to look for the last 3 years performance ng company. Or in our case, in Xerox, we do last year, no? Kasi isa pang sabihin natin downside in such a way kasi shared service entities are not revenue generating. So imagine ano lang 'yan, we only charge other entities. Siyempre hindi mo naman puwedeng pagkakitaan yung other entities within your umbrella, no? So ang tawag nga natin dun sa price na yun that we charge, arm's length. So ibig sabihin it's just really a uh, small margin, no, that we generate out of providing those services to other Xerox entities, no. And in fact, we only charge them that margin or that price for local statutory reporting. Ibig sabihin required lang talaga siya ni BIR. So that's why we're doing it that way. So meaning, going back to continuous improvement targets. So in our case, we need to save 10%, no? So 10% of what? 10% of total cost last year. So meaning, uh, in order for us to get that, it's either we grow in volume. So ibig sabihin dadagdagan yung activities namin without having to add full-time employee. So dadagdagan yung activities namin, i-absorb ng ibang mga tao, hindi kami mag-hire. So ganun ang ano ngayon, ganun ang ah, principle ng shared service eh. So as you grow, as you stabilize the process, you actually have to standardize it kasi imagine, pare-parehas lang dapat, no? But in reality, 30 Xerox entities, in my example, can perform various activities in different ways. So as shared service, eto ngayon, yan yung pinaplansya, yan yung ina-iron out, yan yung ini-stabilize, and we standardize the way of preparing it. That's continuous improvement, no? Okay. So may question ba kayo doon around continuous improvement targets? Sige.
Wala.
Sige, thank you. Parang ano lang din yan eh. Syempre, halimbawa, yung performance mo sa class natin. Kasi syempre, we measure your performance based on quizzes. Actually, like I said before, yung assignment, no? Assignment, as long as you submit it earlier than the deadline, you can always get 100% there. Kasi what I do is I review it and then I send it back to you for resubmission. No? So I will say, for example, you have to redo or review your answer to question 1 or 2 or all. No? So I actually, like I said, assignment is really a way for me to check whether you understand the concept of what I discussed. No? So, yun, take advantage of that. And of course, sa quizzes, that's actually um, how you rate yourself naman, no? So, and paano natin ipapasok yung continuous improvement doon? Syempre, you're after taking the exam, you can actually see your ratings, you know? So you have to improve from there, no? And at least for your class, no? So everyone's really performing well in terms of those quizzes and assignments, which is good news. So, number 6, ito na, yung kasasabi ko lang, feedback. So ako, nagbigay na ng feedback about your performance, no? About the quizzes, about the assignment, what I expect, and what I expect to happen, no? Ito pala, yung sabi ko, yung survey. So imagine down to our last 2 weeks, and yet I still don't have the result of those surveys. So probably soon as I have those surveys back, I can just simply apply it to my next subject, to sa next modular group na siguro. Kasi there's no way na for me to recalibrate the methods of teaching. Kasi, I mean, what's the point, no? So last week na natin for management accounting, next week. And those who have answered it, thank you. Those who have not, maybe next time, use it as a platform also, at least for you to get uh, quality teaching, no? Kasi syempre yun lang yung way, especially for me, this is my first time to teach in TIP. In PUP, I can always put it as part of my exam, no? So one question in my exam would be feedback, like for them to tell me what needs to be improved. Mas concern ako doon eh. Ano ba yung kailangan i-improve kesa dun sa, ano mo yun, yung sabihin lang na okay. So, factors to be considered in timing the report. How critical is the information for the success of the organization? Yung sinasabi ko, how critical those surveys to me to improve my teaching methodology. How specific level of management that is receiving the feedback. The sophistication of the organization's IT. Well, this is really in terms of evaluating, in terms of receiving feedback, and actually your answer to it, no? So it really depends, no, on also one really depends on the IT capability of your company. So in Xerox, we have outsourced the IT to a different company. Previously, it's within Xerox. No? Now, right now, it's outsourced to a company called Wipro or Vipro. Ang kalaban daw ng Philippines in terms of IT capabilities, India. Then I found out that in India, hindi pala tapos na kung graduate ka na sa undergrad. Most of them, they continue with MBA. Especially with those people working in an IT environment. So kaya pala ganun sila ka-advance in terms of IT capability. Kasi 'di ba sa atin, usually IT is 4-year course, no? And mostly, 'di ba meron pa nga mga universities that offer 2-year course for IT, no? So, well, yun lang naman yung napansin ko, no? So that's why, like I said, high competition talaga natin ng India in terms of IT. Pero syempre, pag accounting pinag-uusapan, number 1 pa rin ang Philippines. And Guatemala, if it's language, pag naman kasi sa Guatemala doon usually nilalagay kung bawa French speaking, or kung imagine ang invoice mo in French, syempre wala tayong laban dyan. Unless meron naman paraan, di ba? Meron ka namang Google Translate. Pero yun nga, most entities, if it's in different language, not English, no? Kasi yun, they put it in other place, no? So like Guatemala. So strategic feedback enables managers to test if strategy produces the expected result. If not, it is caused by implementation problems or invalid strategy. Timely reporting of actual results and identification of causes could help correct an action so that the plan is executed as intended. So, well, I think ito naman yung palagi natin pinag-uusapan. So, we have to calibrate based on the actual, no? 'Di ba yan din yung pinag-uusapan natin doon sa business planning. Yes, we have the budgets, pero ano ba yung when we compare it with the actual, that's how we analyze the results, no? So from there, we calibrate. Paano ba yung pag-calibrate? Does it really mean we have to adjust our budget? No. We need to check why we didn't meet those standards, no? Ano ba yung mga nag-cause why we fail? So in my example earlier, submit on time by workday 7. What are the reasons for these entities why they're not able to submit on time? So sabi pala nung isa, meron po at around 6 p.m. we experience internet failure. So yung mga ganong reason, no? Sabi nila, yung isa pa, internet difficulty, kesyo nagbagal lang yung internet. Alam mo yun, yung mga ganong reasons, those are valid reasons right now, no? Because we are working from home. Before, hindi mo magagamit yan, no? So, ayan. Feed forward control means making predictions of outputs expected at some future time and then quantifying those uh, predictions in management accounting terms. Actually, that's self-explanatory. Feedback control involves comparing outputs achieved against outputs desired and taking corrective action if necessary. I remember one time when we were still working in the office, no? So we've experienced network downtime, no? During close. Imagine the level of stress and pressure at that time because it's on quarter close, no? So imagine lahat ng Xerox entities worldwide, no? I-exaggerate ko lang lahat. Pero in fact, hindi naman lahat, no? So lahat ginagawa sa Philippines. Philippines nagkaroon ng network downtime. So, ibig sabihin, hindi gumagana yung network. So, there's no way for us to perform the job on their behalf because of the network downtime. But those entities cannot tell the authorities, oh, we can't submit a report because Philippines cannot do it for us. So, walang ganon, no? So, it should be business as usual or ipanalangin mo na lang na yung network downtime also happens in those entities abroad, which is really very unlikely to happen. So what we did at that time is we went to nearby computer shops outside the building because yung building ang may problem at that time, you know. So in order for us to perform the activities. So, well, another question is security, no? Pero at that time, what we actually wanted to happen is to complete all the submissions, no, for those entities worldwide. So, okay, so performance measurement in multinational companies. So, well, multinationals, these are companies that operate in several countries. So, yun na nga, palagi natin pinag-uusapan yan. International environment conditions may be very different from and complex than domestic conditions. Kaya nga in accounting, especially in accounting, no, uh, the only accounting portions that we outsource to any countries, no, Philippines included. Sabihin natin ito na nga lang Philippines. Usually what we outsource are US or yung generally accepted accounting principle lang. So in our case IFRS or US standards. The local legal stays with the country. Paano yung local legal? Yung filing ng BIR. Do you think yung pagpa-file sa BIR here in the Philippines is as complex as in other parts of the world? Sabi nga, nasa Philippines daw is uh, one of the most complex, no? And kasi up to now, yung iba paper pa rin, no, na nagsasubmit. So tinatatakan ni BIR, kailangan receive at this date. Kung hindi receive at this date, meron ka mga penalties, yeah, things like that. So those types of processes stay within the country. Why? Because I mean it employs face to face interaction with different governing bodies, no? So or in our case BIR, SEC, no? So yung mga statutory reportings natin. So environmental variables facing local managers of divisions are economic variable, legal and political, educational, sociological, and cultural variables. Pag-usapan natin isa-isa. Economic variables. Ito lang naman sinasabi na uh, yung manager daw of a division, sabihin natin manager ng Xerox in the Philippines, ano ba yung mga factors affecting his performance? So, sabi natin, economic variables, currency restrictions, taxes, transfer prices, capital markets, and inflation. So, pag-usapan natin tong transfer prices. Transfer prices, in my given example earlier, this is the arm's length, no? Ito yung the amount of margin that we actually uh, put in our transaction to bill other Xerox entities, no? So kaya tinawag natin transfer price yan. Kasi transfer price, this is actually the term we use in billing other entities o tinatawag natin yan na counterparties, no? So it should be within one company. So this is really in the setup of multinational companies. So legal and political factors. So quality, efficiency, and effectiveness of legal structure, defense policy, foreign policy, degree of government control of business, level of political unrest. So these are also factors contributing to, well, sabihin na natin, success of manager, no? Paano ba yan? Especially, sabihin na natin yung nangyari sa Myanmar ngayon, no? So, definitely those political unrest within the country impacts the business, no? So, if it's multinational, sabihin natin, Xerox has a company operating in Myanmar. So, imagine, syempre, when we plan, we don't we act when we do our plans, syempre hindi mo naman agad during planning, hindi mo naman nakikita na there will be political unrest, no? So in our case today, when we did our plan in 2018, we actually don't see that COVID will happen in 2019. So we have to recalibrate, no, because of that. So that's also a good example of this. Educational variables, so literacy rate, sophistication of counting system, degree of technical training, management development program. So, ito yung pinag-usapan natin kanina sa India, diba? India, sabi ko, they're really competitive in terms of their IT capability. Bakit? Kasi nga, in their country, graduating from an IT course is really not the norms, no? Not the standard way of doing things. They have to enroll themselves to MBA as soon as they complete their undergrad. So that's why uh, they're really, sabihin natin na one of the top countries in terms of IT capability or IT support, no? And then when I tried to compare it with the Philippines, yun nga, kaya pala ganun sila ka-competitive is comparing the literacy rate or sabi natin degree of technical training here in the Philippines. Sometimes, um, There are institutions which offer 2-year course for IT lang. So imagine, ang comparison natin is 2-year course with an country with MBA pa in terms of their IT capability. So mas ano nga yung level nila, yung level of expertise na. Sociological and cultural variables. So, cultural and social diversity, social attitude toward material gain, cultural attitude toward authority and persons in subordinate positions, and work ethics. So, ito kasi yung personal, no? So, mostly, we have, uh, we have to abide by corporate rules. So sabi natin, in a multinational setup, there should be one and the same work attitude or work ethics all throughout entities worldwide. Paano yun? Kasi if we're always say na this is cultural, no? So dapat sensitive ka. I mean, dahil sensitive ka, sabi mo it's cultural. How are you going to interact with different people abroad? So sabihin na nga natin, di ba, Philippines o Xerox Philippines is catering to different Xerox entities worldwide. Imagine a Filipino who is very sensitive interacting with a European. A European and American, they're very straightforward people. So that's, well, what I'm trying to say is we have to abide by certain measure. We have to abide by corporate work ethics or corporate attitude, no? So in order for us not to say it's cultural, no? So it's this is really something that Filipinos still need to improve on. So evaluation of performance of foreign units and their managers can create additional difficulties for the following reasons. Complications brought about by legal, cultural, political, economic, and social differences across countries that direct attention to special areas or restrict a local manager's actions. Multinationals must cope with changes in exchange rates, issues of inflation and fluctuations in foreign currency exchange rates that affect performance measures and over and over which the local manager has no control. Technically, this is true. Local managers has no control, but in essence, this is um, this is also something that a local manager can control. Kasi meron naman tayong different measures to mitigate the risk, no? Sabi natin mitigate the risk to lessen the risk of foreign currency exchange rates. Paano ba yan? Sa example natin, Philippines. Siyempre, Philippines is reporting in peso. Pero dahil nga ang mga transactions natin are with different entities abroad, it could be in euro, in USD, in yen, or in uh, Swedish kroner, no? So different currencies. Pero meron tayong tinatawag na hedging. Actually, foreign exchange hedging is simply it's a measure to make sure that at the time that we're going to pay our obligation, we have to reduce exposure, no? Yung loss on translation na tinatawag. Again, this activity will be discussed with you lengthy in your financial accounting subject. No? So I just gave you an overview on how we can uh, lessen the risk in terms of translating foreign currencies. No? Okay. So availability of materials, skilled labor, as well as cost of materials, labor, and infrastructure. Yan na, power, communication, and transportation may differ significantly across countries. No? Since we're talking about multinational companies, ito nga yung companies where we're present, no, in different parts of the world. Syempre, each country has different infrastructure. Dito lang sa Philippines, uh, yung internet speed natin, no, sa latest survey, we are still in I think number 110, no, in terms of speed. So number one pa rin ang Singapore, uh, the other nearby Asian countries, no. So yun, that's also part of things that we need to consider, especially also taxes, no. Sabi natin, with the create bill, it will um, encourage investors abroad, no, to put their money here in the Philippines because we're actually reducing the amount of tax to pay, no, yung create bill, if you're even listening to the news. Companies may have problems in setting transfer prices considering different tax structures and currency restrictions of the countries in which their divisions operate. So this part will actually be discussed with you in length in your tax subject, no? But at least to give you an idea, paano ba yan? Siyempre meron tayong tinatawag na siyempre because Philippines is dealing with different entities abroad, there are certain revenue regulations imposed by BIR on how we tax those kind of transactions. No, they're very strict in dealing with these transactions, wherein um, a single peso that we transact with different entities abroad, it has to be fully documented and signed by different counterparties, no. So dapat signed by the Philippine entity as well as the authorities. I mean, management from uh, the entity abroad, no. So that's how they do it. Import controls and limiting selling prices of companies' products may be imposed by government in some countries. No, so if you're familiar, another good example is the sin tax. Ito yung mga tax imposed on tobacco products and may mga sugary products. No, so I just learned recently na ang stick pala ng cigarette ngayon umaabot na ng 9 pesos kasi when I was young, tagal na rin nun, no? Parang sobrang mura lang siya, nasa 1 peso, 2 pesos lang. Kesyo hindi naman ako nag-smoke. Hindi ko alam na gano'n na pala yung price niya until such time na I got engaged with company doing ano yung product niya? Mighty and Winston. So that's the time when I found out na it actually increased more than 1,000%. No? So distinguishing performance of managers from performance of organization units. Ito yan. Performance evaluation is performed at different levels in the firm, top management, mid-management, and operating level of individual employees such as production sales. It is important, though, that the performance evaluation of a manager should be distinguished from the performance evaluation of manager subunits such as division. Bakit muna? Bakit hindi na lang isa? Pare-parehas naman tayo ng goal. Bakit kailang magkaiba pa yung evaluation process natin? Simply because there are factors that may not be controllable, no, by a manager. Sabihin natin na though isang target natin, a sales manager doesn't have control with purchasing department. In such a way that uh, finance manager may not have, sabi ko may not have control over credit and collection. So, dahil nga iba-iba yung function, dapat you're being evaluated only with those activities where you have control with. So the evaluation should recognize the factors inside and outside the firm influence the outcome of the manager's efforts and abilities. The evaluator should separate the outcome of the manager's activities from the effort and decision-making skills employed by the managers. Ito medyo vague in such a way that sinasabi na dapat daw nakaseparate yung outcome ng manager's activities from the effort and this. Ibig sabihin wala daw points ang effort. Parang ganun sinasabi, no? Yes and no. Yes, siguro in terms of quantitative evaluation, pero no in terms of qualitative. Because kanina pinag-usapan natin, feedback is also important part of the evaluation process, no? Because by providing feedback, you're actually giving person a chance to recalibrate his system, or in multinational terms, or multinational setup, this is actually a way for you to recalibrate or improve your process or the way of doing your function. So the evaluation must include only factors that the manager controls. Ito na yung pinag-usapan natin. No? So because of uncertainty and lack of observability, a risk-averse manager can become improperly biased to avoid decisions with uncertain outcome. O dahil nga kung if we're not going to put distinction between controllable and non-controllable, baka tong si manager dahil forward thinker siya, no? So gusto niya uh, only undergo transactions that will favor his performance. So kung risk averse nga yan, hindi niya na lang kukunin yung ibang transactions, no? So intensity of incentives, so financial and non-financial incentives. Compensation of manager contains portion for salary and for incentive. Management compensation frequently includes incentives tied to performance. Ito yung kanina, naalala niyo pa yung example ko na KPI ng Xerox, we have to submit 7 p.m. every workday 5. Actually, that is also linked. The reason why people always make sure to comply with the KPI, to achieve the KPIs, because it's linked with incentive. Imagine just by making sure you get a green, kasi green or red lang yan, hit or miss. So if you're able to achieve or to hit all your KPIs across all entities for 3 months, you'll get to receive 15% incentive, 15% of your monthly salary multiplied by 3 months. So that's a lot of money. And for other departments, it could be zero, no? So like I said, it's a hit or miss. So if you miss to achieve those KPIs, ergo, you don't receive any incentive. So it's 15% or zero. Oops, actually, that's the end of my presentation.
This has been your instructor, Mark Gibson. Thank you for learning with us. See you in our next discussion. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See ya!